Hi, and welcome to my video on simplifying a combination of fractions and decimals. Let's simplify as a fraction. Notice I have decimals and fractions, so I want it as a fraction. That means I change my decimal to a fraction and use the fraction rules for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So decimal 0.5 or decimal 5 is 5 out of 10. And 5 out of 10 is 1/2. So 1/2 plus 3/4. Now, common denominator for 2 and 4 is 4, so I'll multiply the first fraction by 2 over 2. That gives me 2 over 4 plus 3 over 4. Common denominator is 4, so I keep the denominator and add the numerators. 2 plus 3 is 5. So 5 over 4, 4 goes into 5 once, and 1 left over, so 1 1/4. Change my decimal to a fraction. 6 over 25 is a fraction. So my decimal 0.3 is 3 over 100, because the 3 is in the hundreds place. We're subtracting fractions, so I need a common denominator for 25 and 100. Common denominator is 100. And so I multiply by 4 over 4. That gives me 4 6s are 24 over 100. Subtract 3 over 100. And 24 subtract 3 is 21. And I keep my common denominator of 100. 21 is not even, so 21 got a 3 and a 7, which is not a factor of 100, so it's reduced. 6 divided by, so 2.25, decimal 25, if you remember decimal 25 is 1/4. Or you can think of decimal 25 as 25 over 100. And 25 over 100 reduces to 1. 25 into 25 is 1. 25 into 100 is 4. So that's 2 1/4. A couple of ways you can get it, either knowing decimal 25 is 1/4, which you should have memorized. Now, when we're dividing fractions, we should change our mixed numerals to improper fractions. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9 over 4. And when you divide, you multiply by the reciprocal, which is 4 over 9. The 6 is over 1. So when we're multiplying, if you remember, you should cancel first. You can only cancel when you're multiplying fractions. So 3 into 6 goes 2. 3 into 9 goes 3. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. So 8 over 3 becomes 3 into 8 goes 2. That's an 8. And 3 into 8 goes 2, and 2 left over, so it's 2 2/3. D, I have to remember that when I'm simplifying, I have PMDIS, or bed mass. So I have to do the inside of my brackets first. So decimal 9 squared, leave that alone. And I have to simplify the inside of this bracket. So let's change my decimal to a fraction. So that's 19 over 100, because the 9 is in the hundreds place. I need a common denominator for 100 and a 5. Common denominator for 105 is 100. So I multiply 1/5 by 20 over 20. And I will not square this until I get this inside of this bracket completely simplified. So that's 19 over 100. 1 times 20 is 20. 2 times 20 is 100. And again, I will not square this until I get this bracket completely simplified. Keep the common denominator of 100. Add 19 and 20, you get 39. Now I have the bracket fully simplified. I will do, the brackets are simplified. So now I will do my exponent next. So decimal 9 squared, 9 9s are 81, and I got 2 decimal places, because decimal 9 times decimal 9 is 81, and there's 2 decimal places, so I move my decimal 2 places to the right. 2 places to the right. So that's done. Okay, one step at a time. Decimal 81 is the same as 81 over 100. 81 over 100 because the 1 is in the hundreds place. I have a common denominator of 100. So 81 subtract 39 is 42. Let's see, yep, 42. 42 is even, so I'll divide by 2. So that gives me 2 into 42 is 21. 2 into 100 is 50. So this simplifies to 21 over 50. Notice I do one step at a time. After I did my squaring here, which is my exponent, I cross it out and I have multiplication division left. But after I square here, I only have subtraction left. And I have to work my subtraction left to right. Okay. E, I have a decimal, so 3/5 times 1.1 decimal 5 is 1 and 5 over 10, which is 1 and 1/2. So 0.5 is a half. So that's 1 and 1/2. So that's 3/5 times 1 times 2 is 2 plus 1 is 3 over 2. And can I cancel when I'm multiplying? Nope. There's no cancellation going to occur. So that gives me 3 times 3 is 9. 5 times 2 is 10. So simplifying as a fraction, some examples. Now, I have the same thing again, only this time, if you wish, you may pause the video, work out these, and come back to see if your answers are right. That's the reason why I do show you some problems, work them out for you, show you what to do, and you do some to see how you're going to work out. So let's see. Change it to a fraction. So decimal 3 is 3 over 10. That's done. I have to change, because I'm dividing, I change my mixed numeral to an improper fraction. So 1 times 2 plus 1 is 3 over 2. When I'm dividing, I multiply by the reciprocal. So 3 over 10 times reciprocal of 3 over 2 is 2 over 3. Can I cancel? Why? Because when I'm multiplying fractions, I can cancel anywhere from top to bottom. Only when I'm multiplying fractions. 3 into 3 goes once. 3 into 3 goes once. 2 into 2 goes once. 2 into 10 goes 5. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Simplify. Number 2, I need a fraction. So 4.5 is the same as 0.5 is a half. Okay. So now I have to get a common denominator. So 4 and 1/2 multiplied by 2 over 2. Reason? Common denominator for 2 and 4 is 4. So 4, 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So I have 1/2 is the same as 2 over 4. And I'm subtracting here. So 4 subtract nothing is a 4. 2 subtract 1 is 2. 2 subtract 1 is 1. And I got to keep a common denominator. So it's 4 and 1/4. Number 3. Change my decimals to fractions. So 3.3 is the same as 33 over 10. Decimal 0.7 is the same as 7 over 100. 7 is in the hundreds place. Have that done. Now I'm adding, so I think about PEMDAS. I always write it down when you're doing combination of addition, subtraction, and brackets and exponents. So do I have any brackets? No. Do I have any exponents? No. Cross them out. So I have to do multiplication, division, left to right. So really, I have an addition and a multiplication. So I have to do my multiplication first. So when I multiply fractions, I cancel. 7s cancel, 1 each. 5 into 5 goes 1. 5 into 100 goes 20. So 1 times 1 is 1. 20 times 1 is 20. Common denominator, when I'm adding fractions, I need a common denominator. Common denominator for 10 and 20 is 20, so I multiply it by 2 over 2. That gives me 66 over 20. 2 times 33, 2 times 10. And the common denominator is 20, so I add and I get a 67. 20 into 67 goes 3 times, and there's 7 left over, so it's 3 and 7 over 20. Number 4, again, PEMDAS, PEMDAS. I have to do the inside of my brackets first. So if I change my decimals to fractions, which I can, because I want to deal with fractions, so 5, that's decimal 0.5 is 5 over 100. 9 over 10. Decimal 35 is 35 over 100. Because the 5 is in the hundreds place, it's 5 over 100. Because the 5 is in the hundreds place, it's 35 over 100. Now if I want, I could reduce these fractions to make it easier. So, let's see. If I want, I can make this 5 goes into 5 once. 5 into 100 is 20. 5 goes into 35 and 100. 5 into 35 goes 7. 5 into 100 goes 20. So I have them reduced because when you reduce, it makes it easier. I have 1 over 20. Remember now, I have to work out the inside of this bracket fully. So common denominator is for 10 and 20 is 20. So I multiply the 9 by 2 over 2. So that gives me 18. 9 times 2. 10 times 2 is 20. That's an equivalent fraction with the same denominator. Leave the 1 over 20 alone. And I get a 25 over a 20. Now if I want, I could reduce this, or I could make it 1 over 20 times 5 into 5 goes 5. 5 into 20 goes 4. Now because I'm multiplying, I can cancel. So 5 into 5 goes once. 5 into 20 goes 4. So 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 4 is 16. Again, I have PEMDAS. P-E-M-D-A-S. So I have to work out the inside of my brackets first. But before that, let's change all of my decimals to fractions. So that's 5. Let's make it quicker. 5.5 is 5.5. 5.5 is 11 over 2. Okay, good. I'm working out the inside of this, so let's change my decimals to fractions. Let's keep doing that. So 2.5 is 2.5. Okay, that's 2.5. And 2.5 is 5 over 2. Now, let's work out the inside of my brackets. So we have inside of here, I have to multiply before I subtract. So I got 11 over 2, subtract 6 over 1. 2 into 2 goes once, 2 into 6 goes 3 times. So I get 3. 6 times a half is 3. Okay, we got that step done. And if I want to do the inside of this bracket, totally, so that's 1/8 times reciprocal 2/5. Let's continue. 11 over 2, I need a common denominator. So 3 over 1. 2 is the denominator, so I multiply by 2 over 2. So that gives me 6 over 2. 6 over 2 is the same as a 3. I need a common denominator of 2. So, if you continue, the inside of this bracket becomes 11 take away 6 is 5 over 2 squared. I have to simplify the inside of the bracket fully before I go outside. 2 into 2 goes once, 2 into 8 goes 4, so that's 1 over 20. Now I have the inside of my brackets done, and I have to do my exponent next. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 2 is 4. That's done. Now I have to subtract. Common denominator for 20 and 4 is 20, so I multiply the first fraction by 5 over 5. 4 goes into 25 times, so 5 times 4 gives me 20. 5 times 25 is 125. Done. Common denominator is 20, so 125 subtract 1 is 124. And I can reduce it down. I can divide by 2. I can divide by 20 at first to make it 20 into that goes 6, and 4 left over. And that becomes 6. 4 into 4 goes once, 4 into 20 goes 5. So notice I divided 20 into 100 124 6 times. That gives me 124 left over, and reduced it down to 1/5. Okay. How about simplifying as decimals? This time I have fractions and decimals, but let's simplify them as decimals. So that means I'm going to change my fraction to decimals and use my decimal rules. So 2/5 is 4/10 when I multiply by 2/2. 4/10 is decimal 0.4. Now I have decimals. So decimal 6/1 subtract decimal 4. 1 subtract 0 is 1. 6 subtract 4 is 2. So I get 0.21. Maybe notice I get when I subtract. My decimals are under decimals when I subtract. So change your fraction to a decimal. I want to simplify as a decimal. So 1 1/4. 1/4 is, I remember 1/4 as being 0.25, a quarter of a dollar. So I have it memorized. And I want to add these up. So 1.25, add on 0.34. When you add, you line up your decimals. You get a 9, a 5, and a 1. So that becomes 1.59. Again, I'm changing my fraction to decimals. It's 3.04. And 2.5 is the same as 2.5. So now I'm going to multiply 3.04 by 2.5. If you want to use a calculator, you can. I prefer to use my pencil and work things out. 5 times 4 is 20, but then 0, carry your 2. That's a 0. Plus 2 is 2. 3 5s are 15. I get an 8. I get a 0 and a 6. Add that up, I get 0, 0, 6, 7. And I get 2 decimal places here. 1 decimal, that's 3 decimal places in total. So 1, start here. 1, 2, 3. So 7.6. Check on your calculator to see if I'm right. D, change here to a decimal. So 2 and 1/10. 1/10 is 0.1. Okay. Now I'm going to divide. So to do, this is 3.5 divided into 2.1. So you have to have your divisor a whole number. So you move your decimal one place there, and you move your decimal one place to the right here. I have to move it one here. Then the decimal moves up. So this is 35 and 21 now. 35 into that can't go. Put a 0 on. 35 goes 6. Let's see, 6 is 6 5s is 35. You got to carry your 3. 21. Stopped. So when you divide that out, you get decimal 6. E, I have to change my fraction to decimals. So 6/10, 6/25 is, if you multiply by 4/4, that will give you 24/100. So this is 6.24. And we're changing it to decimals, so we leave that decimal alone. So I have 6/25 as decimal 24. Now I have to do PEMDAS, so PEMDAS, PEMDAS. Brackets is already done. I have to work my exponent next. So decimal 4 times decimal 4. 4 4s are 16, and I have 1 decimal place, 1 decimal, so 2 decimal places altogether, so that gives me decimal 16 or 0.16. I have to add these together, so I place decimal under the decimal. 4 plus 6 is 10, carry your 1 is a 4, and that's a 2. So that's a 2.4 when I add them up. Now, I could change all of these fractions to decimals, but it's better to multiply these out and divide, and then in the end change it to a decimal. That's less hassles. So let's work the fractions first. When I divide, I multiply by the reciprocal, 5/3. So notice I just changed my division to a multiplication. Good. Now I have PEMDAS. No brackets, no exponents. I got to do my multiplication division left to right. So if I multiply these two first and then subtract after, that's the correct way. So 3 into 3 goes once, 3 into 9 goes 3. 5 into 5 goes once, 5 into 50 goes 10. So that gives me 3 over 10. Subtract. Can't cancel here, so that's 1 over 20. I got to multiply. Common denominator for 10 and 20 is 20, so I'll multiply the first fraction by 2 over 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 10 is 20, minus 1 over 20. Common denominator is 20. 6 subtract 1 is 5. 5 over 20. 5 into 5 goes once. 5 into 20 goes 4. So we have change them to a decimal. You can change your fractions to decimals and then work them out. But in this one, I changed them all to, I worked out all my fractions first and then converted at the end. Much easier. And practice means work all these out, come back and see if you're right. Here we go. Change them to decimals. Now, if I change them to decimals, so 5.2, 1/8. If I memorize 1/8 I asked you to memorize earlier on, 1/8 is decimal 125. If you take your calculator and divide, then you'll get a decimal 125. Add these up. Let's see, 5.2, 0.125, 0 and a 0, keep the place values in line, 5, 2, 3, 5. So 5.325. I know what 1/8 is. I have it memorized. Or I can take 8 and divide it into 1, work it out. I'll get a decimal 125. Number 2, PEMDAS. PEMDAS. So I have to multiply and divide before I subtract. So here we go. So let's change my fractions to decimals first. 3/4, I have it memorized as decimal 75. Done. These are all decimals, so I'll just rewrite them, leave them like that. So I have to multiply decimal 75 by decimal 8, so 75 times 8. 5 8s are 40, you got to carry your 4. 7 8s are 56, so that's 56, that's a 60. And I have decimal 75 is 2 decimal places, decimal 8 is 1 decimal place, that's 3 altogether, so that gives me decimal 6. 0.6 when I multiply. Subtract. I have to divide decimal 6 into decimal 3. So here we go. Move it over one place. So 6 into 3 can't go. Bring 0. 6 into 30 goes 5. So 30. So decimal 3 divided by decimal 6 is 0.5 or a half. And 0.6 subtract 0.5 is 0.1. Number 3, we have to change them to decimals. So 3/5 is 6 over 10, and that's 0.06 squared. So I have all decimals. Good. Decimal 6 squared is 36, and decimal 6 times decimal 6 when you multiply is 36, and I have 2 decimal places. Decimal 2 cubed is decimal 2 times decimal 2 times decimal 2. So that's 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. And I have 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3. So I got decimal 0.008. And when I add, I get 0.36. Add on 0.008. That gives me an 8, 6, and a 3. So decimal 368 with a 0. 0 decimal place 368. Number 4, I have to change to decimal. So 7 over 10 is decimal 0.7 squared. And 1.6. 2 and 2/5 is 4 over 10, and 4/10 is 0.4, so that's 2.4, 2.4. And I have to work out, remember I'm working on BEDMAS, PEMDAS, whatever way you want to say it. There it is. And I have to work out my brackets fully before I do anything. So we leave that exponent alone, and I have to add these first. So that gives me a 4 when I add. 1.6 add on 2.4 is a 0, carry a 1 is a 4. Now I got to take 0.7 and multiply. So decimal 7 times decimal 7 is 49, and I have 2 decimal places, so I got decimal 49 times 4. So 49 decimal times 4. 4 nines is 36, you got to carry your 3. 16, 19, and I have 2 decimal places, so it's 1 decimal 96 when I multiply. Number 5 has, again, remember when I looked at, let's go back and look at this one. I worked out my bracket fully, then I worked my exponent, and then I multiplied or divide last. So I only have one operation to do, which is multiply. So PEMDAS again, PEMDAS. Very, very, very important to know the order of operations. I keep emphasizing it. So let's work the inside of this. Probably what I could do is subtract these fractions right away and change them to a decimal after. Or I could change it to a decimal first. Anyway, whatever way you wish to do it. So you could go 2. That's times 2 over 2. So that's 8 over 10. 8 over 10. Oh, I give myself a little bit of more room here now. That's 0 when I subtract. Let's start again. Let's go 2 and 8 over 10. Subtract 2 and 3 over 10. That's done. And this one is subtract here. I get a 1.4 times 100. Okay, so I'm subtracting these two, but I need a common denominator of 10. So that's 2, subtract 2 is 0. 10 subtract 3 is 5. So I get 5 over 10. I'm going to square it. And this is 1.4 times 100. So that's 5 over 10 is a half. Okay, so remember I said I do one step at a time. 1/2 squared is 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So I have to do, I got my bracket fully simplified here, and I have it fully simplified here. So when I'm down, bracket's fully simplified, then I do my exponent next. Notice I did not do the subtraction. I did not do my addition till after my exponent is cleared up. So my exponent is gone, brackets are gone. Now I will multiply these. So 1.4 is 14 over 10, because 4 is in the 10th place. That's done. Again, I keep going, and 2 into 14 goes 7, 2 into 10 goes 5, so 7 times 1 is 7 over 500. And common denominator, I have to multiply this one by 125, because if you think about it, take it 500, 4 divided by 500 is 125, so that gives me 125 over 500. Subtract 7 over 500. Common denominator is 500, and 125 subtract 7 is 118. And 118 is an even number, so it's 5 over 5. 2 into 119. 2 5s makes 10. Oh, that's an 8, sorry. 2 and 18 goes 9, so I get 59, and it's half of 500 is 250. So the final answer here is 59 over 250. But again, you simplify the inside of your brackets first. When you get that done, then you do your exponents, then you do your multiplication division, and then after you get your multiplication division done, you do your addition and subtraction. So notice the order that it worked. A little bit long, but I wanted to make this one longer. I wanted to make sure that you work things out and you do one step at a time. Make sure, do one step at a time when you're doing your order of operations. So if you had to follow this through, you could see where if any mistakes were made. And you notice I made 5/10 half. I reduced my fractions down. When I'm multiplying fractions, notice I canceled to get a smaller fraction. Easier to do. Better to cancel when you're multiplying fractions than it is to, if you multiply those out and then cancel, you have bigger numbers. So it's easier to cancel first. If you like what I just did, you can click on the like button, the subscribe button, notification bell, write a comment if you wish, and visit my math website at mathfullyexplained.com. The information about me, my degrees and teaching experience, the section on videos telling you about my teaching strategies I use to help you learn your math, and the section on content gives you the topics, the number of videos. The topics completed are in black font, and there's also topics that are in red font that will be completed in the future. They'll keep changing. The red font will change to black as I do more. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.